So good to have you join us today. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Lee Ji-yoon in Seoul. Coming up on today's Business Daily. Korea's consumer price index climbs nearly 2% in April from a year earlier on the back of rising oil and service prices. U.S. President Donald Trump has threatened to possibly terminate the Korea-U.S. free trade agreement, calling it a horrible deal for Americans. How should Korea prepare for potential changes to the trade deal? We'll sit down with an expert to talk about this. We start off with consumer prices. Inflation slowed slightly in April as a drop in the prices of agricultural goods offset a rise in oil and service prices. Our Kim Min-ji starts us off.
Korea's consumer prices continued their upward trend last month. Statistics Korea says the country's consumer price index rose 1.9% in April from a year ago, slowing from the 2.2% growth in the previous month. After posting growth in the 1% range in the latter half of last year, inflation has been hovering around 2% this year.
The growth in April was led by a rise in petroleum and gasoline prices, as well as an increase in service prices thanks to the start of the holiday season, which pulled up the cost of air travel. But this was offset slightly by a drop in vegetable prices, and the prices of petroleum products dropped slightly on month.
Prices of petroleum goods and gasoline surged 11.7% in April, pulling up inflation by 0.48 percentage points overall. Service prices, which include dining and housing expenses, rose 2.2%, leading to a gain of over 1.2 percentage points in consumer price growth. Agricultural, livestock, and fisheries prices rose 4.5% last month, slowing from the 5.8% growth in March. But the prices of vegetables alone fell 6% on year due to better harvests. However, what's worrisome is that the rise in prices comes amid stagnant income growth. Korea's nominal monthly household income grew 0.6% last year, the slowest rate of growth since 2003. And there are mounting concerns that the country may face a so-called consumption cliff.
The debt to disposable income needs to be at around 100 or 110% for people to spend. But in Korea, the figure stands at around 170%, meaning they don't have the capacity to spend. There needs to be more efforts to reduce the ratio, or it will continue to be a factor that dents the country's growth.
That's why experts say it will be even more important for the new government to lay out measures that encourage corporations to invest and create quality jobs, as well as policies that boost the livelihoods of the public in general to prop up spending. Kim Min-ji, Business Daily.
Well, Samsung looks poised to become the world's largest supplier of semiconductors in the second quarter of this year for the first time ever. Market tracker IC Insights projects Samsung Electronics sales will rise 7.5% to reach an estimated $15 billion, while Intel sales reach $14.4 billion. In the first quarter, Intel beat out Samsung, keeping its first place as the largest semiconductor supplier since 1993. But Samsung's strong performance is expected to continue as the demand for memory chips continues to rise. And the memory chip market is expected to keep growing along with price increases, as the average selling prices of DRAM and NAND memory in the first quarter were up 26% and 8% respectively from the previous quarter. The combined net profit of Korea's banks surged to a 6-year high in the first quarter. According to the Financial Supervisory Service, the combined net profit came to $3.8 billion for the January to March period, up nearly 50% from the same time last year. The financial regulator said this is largely due to one-off gains seen from a surge in the Korean won, as well as the sale of its stock holdings and securities. Now, the sharp increase in profits also came as state-run banks cut their loan loss provisions by roughly $885 million for bad debt from the faltering shipbuilding and shipping sectors last year. The U.S. appears to be stepping up its protectionist moves. Just recently, President Donald Trump criticized the Korea-U.S. free trade agreement, calling it a deal that should have never been made, and said that the U.S. would either renegotiate the deal or even terminate it. So how should Korea prepare for this? And what impact could this have on the Korean economy? Let's find out.
That's the big question, right?
Over the weekend, U.S. President Donald Trump signed an executive order issuing directions to review all international trade agreements signed by the U.S. to look into possible trade violations and abuses. Economists see this as part of Trump's America First policy as he tries to raise price competitiveness of American goods. Korea is currently the U.S.'s sixth largest trading partner in goods, with the U.S. goods trade deficit with Korea standing at $27.7 billion last year. But now, with Trump having said that he will either renegotiate or terminate, quote-unquote, the horrible trade deal with Korea, there are growing concerns about the fate of the KORUS FTA. The current trade deal between the two countries states that it may be terminated effective 180 days from the day on which one party notifies the other of its intent to terminate. Although the U.S. administration as of now has not yet requested anything official, experts say that the Korean government must gear up for a potential renegotiation or termination of the deal.
And to tell us more about this, Professor Yang Jun-suk from the Catholic University of Korea joins us in the studio today. So good to see you.
Happy to be here.
All right, so what's the situation like right now in regards to the potential renegotiation of the Korea-U.S. FTA?
Well, President Trump said that he wants to renegotiate or terminate the Korea-U.S. FTA, but the paperwork hasn't started yet. And he has ordered the USTR to look into the existing trade agreements of the United States, see what needs to be changed or what needs to be nullified, and that's going to take 180 days.
Okay.
So Korea has at least 6 months to prepare, and then it looks like he's going to start with NAFTA first. So if he actually does start with NAFTA first, then that'll give us some additional time as well.
Now, but then if the U.S. decides to terminate this deal with tariffs close to zero right now, then most trade between the two sides would be subject to WTO tariffs, which are much higher.
Right. On the U.S. side, the tariffs are around 1.5 to 4% for most items, while on the Korean side, for manufactured goods, it lies between 4 to 9%. So at least on paper, the Korea would have the higher tariffs, and it'll be more disadvantageous for the United States, especially agricultural goods where the tariff rates for Korea are even higher. But even if they do terminate the agreement, that's going to affect perhaps 0.5% of Korea GDP per year. Now, Korean Economic Research Institute did some study, and they think that United States is not likely to terminate, but renegotiate. And they tried to come up with some numbers under some renegotiation scenarios. And one scenario that they had where they keep the trade deficit to the level of 2011, just before the KORUS FTA took effect, they think the potential loss would be $17 billion compared to not adjusting the KORUS FTA from the current state. But while $17 billion sounds like a lot of money, that's accumulated loss over 5 years.
Okay.
So we divide that $17 billion by 5, and that turns out to be about 5% of Korean exports to the United States, about 0.6% of Korea's total exports in 2016. So while every hit is bad, this number is a renegotiation or even termination is survivable. I think it's very important to note that Trump is a very hard bargainer, so Korea should be bargain hard as well, and Korea does have a lot of leverage on its own.
All right. Well, now Trump has proposed to slash the corporate tax rate and also offer multinational businesses a steep tax break on overseas profits brought into the United States. So what kind of impact do you see this having?
Okay, well, President Trump had a press conference last Wednesday, and he announced his tax reform. The strange thing, though, is that his tax reform proposal was only 1 page long, and it maybe had about 100 words. And among that was reducing the corporate tax rate from 35% to 15%, and then closing a lot of tax loopholes. Problem is, he did not say which. So a lot of people are having a very difficult time trying to estimate the exact effect of this tax reform. But some people have made some simulations based partially on what he announced on Wednesday and partially on what he did announce during the campaign. And it's going to greatly increase American government deficit and government debt. One estimate says that without this tax reform, the government debt will be 89% of GDP by 2027, but it'll increase to 111% if Trump tax cut goes into effect. And I think a lot of people, even in his own party, while they like tax cuts, are very afraid that this type of high deficit and high debt is not sustainable. So he's going to have some difficult time passing this through not only Congress, but even his own party.
Yeah, and also some are warning that if changes are made to this Korea's FTA, then Chinese and Korean goods are going to rise in prices, in terms of prices, perhaps affecting average consumers here in the country.
Well, Korean goods definitely, because now the Americans will have to pay tariff-inclusive price. They will also lose a lot of opportunities in Korea as well. Korea's FTA, believe it or not, is the second largest FTA that the United States has. And Korea is their 7th largest trading partner. Now, percentage-wise, perhaps Korean share in the American market is not that big, but still, in terms of some products, as I mentioned before, like beef, agricultural goods, Korea is a major customer, and there's a lot of competition out there for the Korean market from countries like Australia and China. So if Korea's FTA is terminated, United States will face significant losses in the Korean market, as well as increasing prices in their own domestic market as well.
Now, what's your outlook then on Korea's FTA from here on out?
Okay, well, I tend to agree that President Trump is using this as a negotiation tactic. He's going to come out very hard at first, and then maybe he'll tone down a little. Problem is, Korea has always been vulnerable to this kind of hard negotiation tactic. So at this time, I wish Korea would take a bolder step in order to sort of defend ourselves and find a win-win strategy rather than all win for one side. I think we should be prepared to even let go of the Korea's FTA if the deal is unacceptable to Korea. Having said that, though, I think because he's going to come out very hard, he may start the deal with termination. The Korea's FTA says that one side can terminate the agreement with 180 days notice, but then the other side has 30 days to request continuance or exceptions in certain provisions. So that may be what he's looking for. But if he does decide to take a hard tactic like that, we should try to discourage him to take that kind of a tactic as much as possible. We do have some allies in the United States. We have congressmen in the beef-producing districts. We have congressmen in districts where Korea has a foreign direct investment in. And we have districts where they're concerned about increasing prices or reduced trade. So Korea should definitely try to help mobilize those congressmen who may be standing for Korea, and this includes people in his own Republican Party.
So be prepared for all types of scenarios, right?
And I think because Trump is a very hard bargainer, we should be prepared to bargain hard as well, and that sadly means taking more risks.
All right. Thank you so much for your insight today.
Thank you.
The government says it will create roughly 84,000 new high-quality jobs across 20 sectors by the end of the year. This is according to the Ministry of Labor and Employment, which unveiled a detailed job creation blueprint for this year. The plan largely consists of nurturing new industries, expanding welfare services, and strengthening support for startups. For one, it has vowed to hire about 4,400 people in the renewable energy sector while creating 2,800 new jobs in the ICT industry, specifically related to promising growth engines such as drones, smart cars, and robots. Will the future of international travel include a free smartphone in your hotel room? Our Elliot Kim takes a look at a Hong Kong-based company that hopes to make this vision a reality.
Check into the Ritz Hotel London and you'll see a free device inside for you to use. The company, Tink Labs, calls the device handy and has already deployed these customized smartphones to around 120,000 hotel rooms in 20 cities.
The device here is sitting in the hotel room when the guest checks in. So the guest checks in, walks in the hotel room, finds the device there. The device gives the guests unlimited calls, internet, and they can take it around town and learn about the city through our city guide, and all the different information on the device.
Tink Lab not only intends to end travelers' worries over roaming phone charges, but also hopes to replace many of the devices currently sitting in hotel rooms.
One of the most important things is that it has the ability to act as a room key. So when integrated with the hotel system, this device, when you take it out, it can act as a room key. You can use it. You can also use it as a complete in-room control device, right? So the device itself, it's a remote control. You can control lighting, curtains, temperature.
While giving the traveler the freedom to roam like a local, the phones are also said to boost hotel revenue by an average of 3.4% by providing the customer increased access to hotel services. According to a Tink Labs press release, incremental revenues were boosted by about 20% on average. The company raised $125 million in its latest round of funding, and its second-generation phone is scheduled to launch this May. The devices are expected to be in 1 million hotel rooms by the end of 2017, with the hopes of eventually having one in every hotel room worldwide. Elliot Kim, Business Daily.
Beer sales keep on growing here in Korea, along with changing consumer tastes. According to data from E-Mart, the largest discount outlet chain by sales, beer sales rose to 55% of all alcohol sales in April, after edging past the 50% mark for the first time just a month before. Industry watchers say these figures indicate a change in societal habits, as consumers are more likely to enjoy light drinks with their families instead of long drinking sessions with friends or coworkers. The number of households with only 1 or 2 people increasing to over 55% has contributed to sales as well. Imported beer sales continues to grow, with Korea Customs Service reporting over 95,000 tons imported in the first half of 2016, a 34.5% increase on year. An increasing number of Koreans are eating less rice, with per capita rice consumption falling to about 63 kilograms in 2015 from what was about double the amount 3 decades ago. And our Lee Ju-young tells us about some companies that are thinking outside the box to solve the country's excess rice problem.
Korea's excessive rice stockpile has become a major headache for the country. The government has roughly 3.5 million tons of rice in reserve in 3,900 public grain warehouses as of the beginning of this year, the highest level since record-keeping began in 1970. That means an annual $175 million is being spent on storage expenses alone, with stockpiles reaching 4 times the level of UN recommendations. A lot of effort has been made to tackle this problem so far, with the country scaling down rice cultivation areas, joining international food aid programs, and even using rice as animal feed. But one of the most effective and promising solutions that has emerged is using rice to make consumer products. Take a look at bakery 햇살마루, which offers some 40 types of breads and pastries strictly made with rice. The 10-year-old business says about 1,500 goods are purchased a day on average, mainly by health-conscious consumers.
I don't really like flour, so after I eat bread, I would have problems with digestion. But rice bread has been fine on the stomach. I don't feel bloated, and it's pretty good.
Rice-based bread tastes so much better, and the texture is good. We're from a nation that's been consuming rice for thousands of years, so this seems to suit our diet better than flour.
Hetsalmaru says although the fermentation process was tricky to master in the beginning, it's now regularly adding 3 to 4 new bread varieties every 2 months.
There's no difference in the texture now. Initially, there was a lot of difference in terms of both texture and taste, but I think now we're about 90% close to flour-based bread.
Rice is also being used in the unexpected field of toys as well. After about 3 years of trial and error, startup Jam Family commercialized this clay product that feels just like rice cakes without the stickiness. The clay company says it welcomes about 2,000 orders per month, which takes about 1 ton of rice to manufacture. While there's demand in China as well, Jam Family says it hopes to establish a stronger market presence in Korea first.
Our company aims to create a world where children are free of chemicals. If existing products are very chemical heavy, we make products with ingredients that are edible. Many people tend to think of clay merely as children's toys, but it can also be used to help patients with dementia, developmental disorders, and ADHD.
As of now, the majority of rice-based products are made with regular rice that goes on the table. But experts say this actually is a very costly method because table rice needs to be reprocessed to be suitable for other use. That would only add to existing costs.
Because the government only subsidizes table rice, we have a high imbalance in production. So I would say leave table rice to the market and offer more financial support for farmers who grow other types of rice that can be used for animal feed, baking, or for cosmetics. I think a policy that encourages this kind of production is more sustainable in the long run. So we need to diversify the cultivation of various rice types right from the get-go.
The state-run National Institute of Crop Science is doing just that by developing a new rice variety called 한가루, which is made specifically for the purpose of brewing beer.
한가루 was developed to be used as rice flour since it's easy to grind. When we were in the process of exploring various ways to promote the consumption of rice flour, we realized that it can be used to brew alcohol. That's why we developed a way to mix it with beer.
Made up of 60% malt and 40% rice, this craft beer is said to be less bitter and easier to drink compared to those solely made up of barley. After grinding 한가루, the particles go through a saccharification process.
이게 맥주를 제조하기 전에 전분에서 당을 추출하는 맥즙을 만들어야 되거든요. 그래서 맥즙을 만드는 과정이 되겠습니다.
After that, the beer is put in a fridge to be fermented for about 13 days before it goes through a second fermentation process for another month. The Research Institute says it hopes to commercialize these craft beers within the next 3 years and eventually export to other countries around the world. On a broader scale, the Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs said it will also continue to actively support the creation of different rice varieties so as to reduce government stockpiles and encourage exports of rice-based goods in the future as well. Lee Ju-young, Business Daily.
That wraps it up for today. And because tomorrow, May 3rd, is Buddha's birthday, Business Daily will be back on Thursday at the same time, same place with more of the day's top business stories. So don't forget to tune in then. Thanks for watching and see you soon.